today to be joined by a fellow YouTuber with conservative values, faith, family, freedom as a focus. I want to get her thoughts on some of the biggest news stories. April Chapman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. You have an amazing channel, an amazing audience, so I'm just glad to add to the conversation. Let's do it.
Yes. So right away, I wanted to jump in. I know you cover similar topics to me on your YouTube show. What are your thoughts on Kamala Harris? Because the media would have us believe that she was the best thing since Obama and sliced bread. They backed her with $1.3 billion, and then she ends up $20 million in the hole. What are your thoughts on Kamala Harris's loss, and did we dodge a bullet as America?
Absolutely, America dodged a bullet. I think it's interesting that the party of democracy did the most undemocratic thing by literally installing her and raising her to this elevated height of with this shareable narrative that she was going to be our girl. And I'll tell you this, Stephen, on my channel, I talk about this a lot, how the liberal left, all they have is identity, because it's a very Marxist policy in a way to function. And so what they did was they figured Joe Biden has this DEI hire as his VP. We already know we're probably going to lose the election because Joe Biden, he's been long gone. He's a shell of a person now. Bless his heart. I really actually feel bad about that. But what they did with Kamala was they said, we're probably going to lose the 2028 election if we run Joe Biden. But at minimum, if we use Kamala and install her, that'll do a couple of things. That'll help us retain the Black vote, which they absolutely believe that the Black community are their electoral serfs. They think they own it as a voting bloc. They've never ever viewed the Black American community like they view everyone else, as an individual with values that may differ from person to person. It is a collective electoral mindset that they are just the serfs, right? So they elevate Kamala, and they think that because of this perceived Blackness, which we now know, thanks to Candace Owens, that she is not Black. She's in fact of Indian Irish descent. But they know, because so many of us, and I'm not speaking primarily for the Black community, but I've been Black all my life, so I kind of know a little bit about how we view things. And unfortunately, the perception that many of us feel, if we have someone that looks like us, if they make it, then that means that we have made it, which is very, very different than how other Americans view themselves. They view themselves as individuals, and based on their hard work and their meritocracy, they're like, okay, I've made it. So what they did with Kamala, they installed her thinking all Black people would be on board. And what they failed to realize is that there's something unique happening within the Black community. Black men are overwhelmingly leaning way more conservative than Black women, because they've recognized the matriarchal squalor that has taken over this country and caused Black men to wake up and say, wait a minute. Now, not only are they trying to demean and displace white men, they're coming for us now. Now they want us to take a back seat, and they want to elevate this matriarchal figure, which is very feminist, leaning. They don't have any regard. They're always talking about misogyny, but it's really misandry. We're seeing misandry play out in this country, and the liberal left does a very good job of doing it because all they do is identity. So her losing was definitely America dodging a bullet. We see that she didn't really have any meaningful policies. She's unable to articulate with clarity. Well, that's not true. She is able to tell us what she wanted to do. And she exposed her communist leanings and then tried to dial a lot of that back. And the American people, believe it or not, despite all of the censorship, despite her having the media on her side, despite her paying every pulpit pimp that she could find, America realized that this is a fraud. This is a fraudulent campaign. And if we install this woman, if we allow the white guilt and the, oh, you're a racist if you don't support her, they realized if they allowed that to be the driving reason why they supported her, that this country, we probably would have never been able to recover. We absolutely dodged the bullet.
Yeah. From just my white male perspective, something that caught me off guard this election cycle was, trying to trick the Black community that she grew up Black, that she understood what it was like to be, from a slave descent or from a struggling community or even from a wealthy. A lot of the people that I spend time with, they're very wealthy. And so, so they demonize them. You have Barack Obama saying, quit being a misogynist. You guys are sexist, and shaming them. And then the day after she loses, they start calling all Black people racist and sexist. Like, what a terrible way to treat your voters just because you lost. I hope the Black community wakes up and says, wait a minute, we are being tricked. These people think they own us. They take advantage of our voting block.
Right.
They've infiltrated our churches. They've infiltrated our schools. I don't know. Your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I've been saying that for a very long time. It is the same concept that we saw during slavery and in the Jim Crow South. There's this term that I've coined, which is Jerome Crow. And it's very similar to the archetype of Jim Crow, but it's in blackface. What they do is they identify Black Americans that are easily persuaded. Just throw them a little money, right? Just give them a little power and a position. And these Black Americans will inherently go to their own community. And just like Judas, for 30 pieces of silver, they will sell out their own people. They will demean them. Think about Jim Crow and the tactics that were employed during that time. It was a lot of bullying, a lot of subjugation, a lot of, if you don't do this, then we're going to do that. We saw actual prominent Black people lecturing other Black American adults on the fact that, so because you didn't support Kamala, you're a racist. You are identifying with white supremacy. And what I am hoping that your audience will gain and learn from this conversation is that the moment they're going to use the labels, but the moment you allow those labels to stick and you don't push back against it, and you just say, well, I can't say because if I do, they're going to call me a racist. You've already lost. They do the labeling just like the Jim Crow ancestors of yesteryear in order to shame you, in order to silence you, to cause you to run into a corner and hide because you don't want to deal with the backlash. But one thing I will say, the liberals learned that backfired. Coming out, sending the overlord, sending Barack Obama and Charlemagne the God, and all of these insignificant, barely influential Black Americans in the community to come back and tell us that we were racist and sexist, when it's like, no, just admit that your candidate was trash. Like, she just wasn't good, despite the accomplishment of being an attorney, being the attorney general, being a state senator. She didn't have a record that was reflective of, these are the values that I want to bring to America. And as a result, Black people are going to win because these ideas are just good. Her ideas were not good. The idea that Black people need more abortion sold to them is a problem. I'm sure you and your audience knows that we are beyond the rate of replacement. Like, America is dying. But more importantly than that, the Black American community, we're beyond the rate of replacement. We're not having babies. We're not getting married. And then we're not having, in the confines of marriage, we're not having children, right? We're not being fruitful and multiplying and filling the earth. And so therefore, to have a candidate who the entire bedrock of her campaign was to, yes, sis, we're going to give you more abortion, just blew me away. I said, this is not the message that Black women need to hear. And she would make you think that this is how all of us think, and that's what all of us want. We just want to be promiscuous, and we just want to have reckless, intercourse with everybody and we need abortion on the table. And I'll say there is a movement rising amongst Black women, particularly conservative ones, of which I would put myself in that category where we're like, no, we actually want to be wives. We've recognized the lie that the left has pushed on us has not been good for us. We have seen our grandmothers and our great grandmothers and our mothers who believed the feminist lie of the 1970s and the 80s, and then we realized that those outcomes were not good. When I talk about matriarchal squalor, I am referring to generations of bastards raising bastards. And that's not profane speech, and I hope I'm okay in saying that, but it is literally several generations of procreating with outside of the confines of marriage with a man and a woman and babies, and you're staying together, making it work. We see what matriarchal squalor has gotten us. We see what signing on to the abortion lie, how that has messed us up mentally and how it has diminished our view and how we value life as image bearers. And there's a huge segment of the community that are Black. They're like, we don't want this anymore. The struggle of raising children on our own was not good. I personally am a product of a single parent home, and there are deficiencies that are present when you have that as your background. And so many of us are saying we want to do something different. We actually want to see if doing it God's way actually works, because we see the outcomes of us before the 1960s when our families were intact. Our outcomes were so much better. And Kamala Harris just represented more matriarchal squalor. And I am so glad that Black men saw it and were able to influence the rest of the country to say, wait a minute, she really is trash. All she's offering us is abortion and twerk fest down in Atlanta. We're so much more than that. That is not who America is. It's not who Black Americans who were born in this country, who are patriotic in their own way, who recognize this is the greatest country on the face of the earth. We were not about to hand this country over to her. We just were not going to do it.
Yeah, well, you guys played a large role this go around. I'm reading that Trump did better among Blacks, Asians, Latinos, and even whites. I mean, this guy was just absorbing so many people. And, you know, the Republican Party has this phrase of we're the big tent party. But until Donald Trump, they haven't really done a good job of opening the doors, right? It's like, hey, we see your big tent. It looks pretty nice. What's inside? And they've kind of kept to themselves. And now he's broken the doors wide open and he's saying, come in. We want government responsibility. We want accountability. We don't want war. We want affordable food. We want affordable gas. We want people to have families. You're struggling, we'll get you IVF. We want to avoid abortion. Like all of these things, I think people were like, okay, wait a minute. I thought this guy was Hitler. He seems pretty pro-family. He seems pretty America first. He seems to want life to be affordable. Your thoughts on them trying to convince us that this man was Adolf Hitler?
Right. The liberal left are so crazy and deranged and so far out there that their actions actually humanized Trump. A little bit about me. I'm actually from Bronx, New York. So I grew up in a very urban environment. I am very familiar with the grit and grime of New York City. And as a 5-year-old, Donald Trump was one of my heroes. Why? Because he was king of New York. Everybody loved Trump. Everybody wanted to be like Trump. Like I started my first business at 5, and it was because I said, I want to be like that one day. And so when he ran for president, he wasn't presidential. He wasn't necessarily polished and this masterful communicator. But I think that appeal very early on is what perked up a lot of Americans to say, wait a minute, we need to pay attention to this candidate because this is different. We have tried the polished politician, the DC career politician. We are done with that. And so when Trump comes on the scene and he starts, what he did was not novel. It was just common sense. He was like, wait a minute. Okay. Boys don't belong in girls' sports. Like that's a self-evident truth that boys and girls are different. Men are stronger than women, and it doesn't make women less than. It just means we're different. And Trump just started articulating basic fundamental facts that the left has long since abandoned because they're psychopaths. They are just hell-bent on perverting and twisting everything that has been universally understood as this is right, this is wrong, this is up, this is down. They started doing all of this weird stuff. And unfortunately, I can't say it was necessarily the job of the GOP that helped Trump bring in all of these people. What people started to realize is that the media was lying to them and that Donald Trump ran a different campaign than Kamala Harris. He was humanized because he's like, I'll go talk to anybody. Name the time, name the place. I am there. I want to talk to the people. And what he was able to do, despite being this billionaire, is speak the language of the common man. I have this video that went viral on TikTok because I said, you know, Trump, he has a lot of money, but I said, y'all, Trump is ghetto. He's from Queens. He is from New York, and that's just who he is. He's literally that uncle that after he's had too much to drink, he goes and he tells Aunt Bertha that she's fat and she need to lose some weight. And everybody knows Aunt Bertha's fat and needs to lose some weight, but it's true. And then they get mad at the uncle and they're like, come on, we got to take you home, Donald, because you didn't show it out and you embarrassed and hurt Aunt Bertha's feelings. But everybody there knows it's like, well, if somebody didn't tell Aunt Bertha the truth, we might have lost her to a diabetic coma or something else tragic like that. That is how I view Trump. And so the reaction of people flocking to Trump, this election was more about not necessarily who he was, but who the left became. And everyday average Americans are like, I don't want to be this. He is offering just basic common sense solutions to so many problems. And the American people resoundingly came out and voted for him across all ethnic backgrounds. And I thought it was a wonderful display of American patriotism and how it's emboldened more people to say, you know what? I'm not ashamed to wear a MAGA hat. Or I'm not ashamed to say I voted for Trump. Yeah, what you gonna do about it? Like, what you gonna fight me? Because the liberal left will bully with their words, but when it comes down to actually engaging in a dialogue, debating ideas, they are cowards. They don't really want to debate. What they want is to shout you down and to not even engage in an honest dialogue because they know their ideas are trash.
Yeah. Well, we saw that just this week with Senator Chuck Schumer. You know, they've been bullying Republicans, pushing through these multi-trillion-dollar bills that basically the money has just been wasted, or it hasn't even been deployed, even though they keep bragging about all the good that they've done. But now, as soon as Republicans take back the Senate and the House of Representatives, he gives a speech saying, it's important to be bipartisan and not go too far. We need to work together for the good of America. It's like, dude, you were just cramming your crap down my throat. And now that it's my turn, you're like, whoa, remember, we're all friends. We're in this together. It's crazy. What are your, Trump's getting a lot of pushback about this. Well, not from probably people like you and I, but this idea of dismantling the Department of Education. That was something created by Jimmy Carter. It probably started out good, but like all government agencies, it's been captured. And now it's basically just a money laundering pit for the Democrat Party. Your thoughts on him wanting to return the power back to the states?
Right. Well, many people don't realize the Department of Education was started in 1979. And like you said, Stephen, they probably had good intentions, but big government is always problematic. The more power and ground that you give the federal government, the less rights you end up having. It erodes your individualism and your independent thought to say, hey, wait a minute. Why do we have to do it this way? Him dismantling Department of Education, I think, is a phenomenal idea. I am intimately connected with what it's like to be trapped in a failing school district and to have Democrats tell you that, well, you just have to stay here because if you leave, then what's that going to leave? How is that? That's going to impact our numbers with the rest of the students that are left. My mother was an advocate for school choice before school choice was a thing. I'm in my mid 40s, but growing up in inner city New York City public schools. Very early on, my mother had to advocate to pull me out of one of the worst school districts in the South Bronx and to give me an opportunity to go to a better school just so I could learn. I mean, if you're in an environment where there's lots of fights and, you know, the teachers are there, they're just on the payroll to get a check. And I'm not saying that is reflective of all teachers. There are some phenomenal educators that are in it because they actually care about the students. But what dismantling this Department of Education is going to do is to do what America was always designed for, us to function in our freedom. Give it back to the states. Let the states manage and decide how these things are going to be handled, because the federal government, it is too large, it's too big, too much money, like you said, is being funneled in and laundered, and the teachers union has way too much power. They're able to lobby to protect their own interests, and then the children end up suffering. So for example, with me, when I wanted to leave my local school district, the left-leaning school administration told my mother, oh, she can't go. What makes you think you can pull her out of this school? And my mother said, well, watch me. And my mother ended up enrolling me in a charter school in Harlem, where I had to take a bus at 12. Like, this is middle school. I'm 12 years old on New York City subway by myself, taking a bus and a train just to get to a school that has small class size, where the arts were used in order to stimulate learning. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. Well, that liberal school district decides they're going to report me as a truant, because against their request, my mother withdrew me from the school. They refused to release my records and decided they were going to report me as a truant. The amount of bureaucracy and red tape and fighting that my mother had to go through just to get my records released, it was almost criminal. Like, she literally almost had to go up to the school district and threaten violence. Like, if you don't release them, I will come back into that office where that file cabinet is, and I will get those records myself. She pushed back and advocated for me, which opened up so many opportunities for me. I ended up leaving that middle school, getting a scholarship to one of the top performing secondary private schools in the country on a scholarship. And it was all because my mother had to force her way in and advocate for me. When we dismantle the Department of Education, which is something Donald Trump wants to do, it's going to cause two things. It's going to force parents to be parents and say, okay, what is best for my child? And then allow parental involvement and allow parents to make better decisions based on what's best for their child. I do not believe we need to be sharing custody of our children with the government. And the Department of Education has become too powerful and too big, and they're overreach. And now this is how all of the sexual perversion is coming into the schools, all of the woke ideology, the CRT, all of this foolishness that are indoctrinating our children to where now they can't compete on the world stage. You've got children in China, they are walking circles around American children academically. And that is going to impact our ability to compete on the world stage. And so this move by Donald Trump is absolutely necessary. It's going to force failing schools to compete and do better. The money is going to be, everything is going to be handled at the state level, which gives more autonomy and allows parents at the local level to direct and guide. This is how this school district is going to be run. And I'm excited. I knew it was a campaign promise of his, but I really didn't think he was actually going to go through with it. And I think we're going to see that happen. And I'm just excited to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you had a very bold mother that loved you very much, and it's produced an incredible human being. I don't want to beat a dead horse because Kamala lost, thank goodness. But I do think it's worth just pointing out, you know, she kept trying to connect with the Black community, with the middle class community. I'm a Black middle class person, an American, even though she was raised in Canada. Like everything about the story she was telling was so fake, and I just noticed that with a lot of Democrats. It's just a lot of fake stories, and so. At no time did she just say, here's how I'm going to make groceries more affordable. Here's how I'm going to make gas more affordable. She literally ran on, I'm middle class. We're going to raise your taxes. And proof that I will get this done is I'm going to secretly give Beyonce $10 million, Megan Thee Stallion $5 million, Oprah $1 million, Al Sharpton $500,000, Eminem $1.8 million, on and on and on. So a bunch of fake endorsements from uber wealthy people in order to prove that she was for the middle class person. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't make any sense, but it lets you know, and it further reinforces the fact that this is the party of the elite. They love to tout the fact that they're the party of the working class and the common man, and we identify with your struggles. No, they don't. That girl has never struggled a day in her life. So that whole shareable narrative of I'm a middle class kid and, I worked at McDonald's, which we all know didn't happen. She figures and she knows, and this is sad, but it is what it is. A lot, not all, but there is a huge swath of individuals in the Black community that they thrive off of the symbolism and the virtue of it all. She doesn't have to prove that she was actually grew up in a middle class and is intimately connected with their struggle. All she has to do is say it, and saying it without just saying it and trusting her without verifying it was enough to sway some people into saying, see, she's just like us. But what I would say is that it didn't really work, but it demonstrated that she was more elite than she was average. And then the person who actually has a whole lot of money, who actually absolutely could have stayed in the elite class, he came down and descended down to the level of the common man and would talk to you just mano to mano. Hey, how are you? What's your struggle? What are you going through? Gas is high. I know gas is high. Bacon, I tried to get bacon once, and yes, it was expensive. Like, people realized that Donald Trump was like, oh, he can relate, even though financially these are not his problems. He loved this country and he cared about the American people enough to find out what was really their pain point. And he spoke to that and then provided viable solutions to that. Kamala's jewelry alone, when she's just on the campaign trail, valued at between $40,000 and $60,000. Though that's a form of what we call dry snitching. She's dry snitching to the elite to let them know, I'm like you, but I'm over here lying through my teeth to make the American people, the ones who really aren't interested in digging deeper to find out who I really am. I'm just saying that I'm for them. But her entire campaign, from all of the money that she gave to all the celebrities, she thought that America was still the America where we didn't have social media, where we would just idolize celebrities and live our lives vicariously through them. And like I told my audience, most of these celebrities these days, because of the advent of social media, they are way more accessible than they ever used to be. And so we're like, okay, so the Swifties, Taylor Swift, endorsed you. So Taylor Swift is not out here at the grocery store checking her account on the phone to see if she has enough to cover just 3 days worth of groceries. Like, that is a very real lived experience for so many Americans right now. Lots of small business owners in all parts of America shuttered their doors after COVID. Between 2022 and 2023, because of inflation, their customer base is like, I can't even afford to support your small business anymore because I'm just trying to get groceries and put food on the table and gas in my car, and my wages are stagnant, and the cost to function and just live is too weighty and too oppressive. And so that whole the celebrity endorsements was more of a reflection of how out of touch she is, and how Democrats, just like Mario Cuomo, who I am not a fan of, actually said at the DNC, he said, look at all these skyboxes up here. That's all of them up there looking down on us. They don't want to mingle with us. When you go to a Trump rally, everybody is all together. I'm talking even the dignitaries and the who's who. I've been to plenty of Trump rallies. They're not up sitting above, up high looking low. They are down there with everyone else, taking selfies, putting on a MAGA hat, showing what America is really all about, that we are one nation. Even if we are right now living in open and active rebellion to the God that we know exists, under God, indivisible, right? With liberty and justice for all, not all able-bodied people or all trans people or all females, all these different categories. No. America for once chose America over all of these other constructs and categories. And there was no amount of money, no celebrity endorsement that Kamala could tap on the shoulder to say, hey, could you do this for me? Let me put a little bread in your pocket. It wasn't enough. The American people didn't buy it. And I'm grateful for the mercy that we've received, because had she won, we would have a very, very difficult, not just the next 4 years, but probably the next 8 to 12 because of the wicked, destructive policies that she would have implemented.
Yeah. I mean, they wanted to roll no voter ID nationwide, just like they did in California. Let me show you something really quickly. I'm sure you saw this online, but here's Kamala Harris working at McDonald's. So they Photoshop her onto a white girl to prove that she was Black and worked at McDonald's. I mean,
you see how they play in your face?
Yeah.
With the advent of technology and the ability to dig and search and find things, her campaign was one big psyop. They thought, oh, just tell them that you used to work at McDonald's and let us just doctor up this photograph to prove it. And then what Donald Trump does, well, y'all have to understand, Trump is petty. He is straight New York state of mind petty. He's like, oh, she's faking like she worked at McDonald's. Well, how about I'm about to go and actually work at McDonald's? It was the best troll ever. The best troll ever. And what people don't realize, something about Donald Trump, he might be a billionaire, but when he was building his company, he was intimately connected with every aspect of the construction process. He would put on a hard hat and go down to the site and find out what is it that you do? How does this work? Because he wanted to let his staff and the people who were working for him know that I see you and we're all in this together. But he did it from a place of compassion, but it was also from a place of leadership, not in this elite, I'm too good to be out here with you. But it's like, no, he's a problem solver and he understands the power of relationships. The power of relationships. She has never demonstrated an ability to connect on any sort of human level. Everything is always fake and contrived. The laugh is fake and contrived. The giggle, her smoking weed, her washing collard greens in the bathtub. It's all fake and contrived. And I honestly believe it is a reflection of her Marxist upbringing. When you are a trained Marxist, you are trained in the art of deception. You are trained in the art of lying and just saying whatever you need to say, because for the end goal for you is power and control and subjugation. And that's what she represented for America. And I'm hoping that more of your audience, when they listen to what I'm saying, that it will embolden them to speak more freely and openly about these things. Do not be afraid to say out loud that Kamala Harris was a trash candidate. She was. It's not because of her color. It wasn't because of her gender. It was because her policies were trash. And we need to be okay with saying that without being afraid of being called a racist or a misogynist.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. Final question that I wanted to get your thoughts on. There's been this all-star lineup of new people coming into the Trump administration. And every day they're like, oh my gosh, he picked this person. Oh my gosh. It's like watching the NFL draft or something like that. Is there one or two that have stood out to you that you're excited about, or you feel like, wow, I think the country could be very different if this person gets confirmed?
Absolutely. Well, we know he's tagged Vivek Ramaswamy, which I've been a fan of his for a while. He is just incredibly brilliant. We need his business mind, his legal mind, his constitutional mind. We need that in the White House. But believe it or not, Matt Gaetz, okay, Matt's a little crazy, but we need crazy. We need a little bit of crazy on the right, because for so long, the right has been very weak. They've been unable to just stand flat-footed and say what needs to be said. And so I do believe we're probably going to have some challenges getting Matt Gaetz confirmed. But the fact that there's a way that it can be done, we can kind of circumvent that process. But between Matt Gaetz, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Tom Homan, the border czar that he is named, I am looking forward to seeing masculine men rise to the ranks again to set things back into order, because things are out of control. Like I said, and I am, as you can see, I'm obviously not a feminist. But I love being a female, and I don't have a problem getting a seat at the table or being heard. But what I want is to see masculine men at the helm again, leading, because we have to overcorrect the foolishness of the left with all of their bad hiring decisions. We need some men like Matt Gaetz and Tom and Vivek Ramaswamy to kind of come in and say what needs to be said. And they're not jerks about it, but people perceive them to be jerks because they're just making emphatic statements that are true. And we're so used to this effeminized soy boy, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings kind of responses. I'm looking forward to those the most, but I do think we're going to have some challenges getting Matt Gaetz confirmed.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this has been a fun conversation. If people want to follow you online, April, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to connect with me and my content is right here on YouTube, the Standard of Truth podcast. I am on YouTube. I do a lot of live streams, but I do some mid-form and long-form videos. And my whole purpose on YouTube is to, from a biblical perspective, to talk about these social and cultural and political things and to ground them in my worldview, and to help people to understand is I believe what I believe, not because I'm a conservative, but I believe what I believe because of my faith and my Christian values. That is the core foundation of why I believe what I believe. And my worldview kind of flows from that. So they can connect with me on YouTube. And I look forward to, having a great relationship with members of your audience.
Okay. The Standard of Truth podcast. I'm going to put a direct link down below so people can find that. I'll just, parting words, I want to say that April is a good friend of Vince Everett Ellison, who's been on the show many times. So if you like Vince's content, you're going to love April's perspective. April, thank you for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.